Hello, and welcome to the Action Network UFC betting preview. I'm Sean Zerillo, joined today by Billy Ward to help you break down this weekend's UFC card, give you our best bets, favorite underdogs, top props, and more. And if you'd like to tail some of the bets that we discuss on today's show, make sure to find the quick slip links both in the podcast and video description, or visit actionnetwork.com/bet now. Either an 11 or a 12 fight card from Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. Prelims scheduled to start at 4 p.m. Eastern on Saturday, though we did have one cancellation and may have another, so those may start closer to 4:30 p.m. Eastern. Six fight main card at 7 p.m. Eastern, all on ESPN Plus and UFC Fight Pass. Our main event, Charles Oliveira, going by the Predator now this weekend. Do not love that. Against Mateusz Gamrot, lightweight matchup, 5 rounds in the division. Charles, as you can imagine, a very popular fighter and is picked at a very high percentage this week. People picking him in my public data samples around 65% of the time compared to pick 'em odds. So naturally, Gamrot is my projected value side. I make him closer to minus 150 in this matchup. Now, Charles does have the foreign reach advantage. He is the more potent finisher, has some records for finishes in the UFC, I believe 21 in his career. Gamrot, I think, is likelier to get top time here. Just relentless in terms of the chain wrestling, great cardio, really good scrambling. I don't think he's going to get submitted here, which means Charles either needs to knock him out, and that's possible. Gamrot has been knocked down a few times in the UFC, or win a decision. I show value both on Gamrot and the goes to decision prop, though I do prefer Gamrot of the two. I make Gamrot, as I said, around minus 140. I like him up to minus 125, but I make the goes to decision prop around plus 125. You can get as high as plus 180 there. I'll probably play Gamrot normally and then size the plus money GTD prop just a little bit smaller than that. One stat I wanted to point out, Charles, the more efficient striker, gets outlanded, though, by zero point 0.1 strikes per minute at distance. Gamrot, 0.4. So Charles, slightly better striking numbers. Gamrot, though, in terms of control time in the clincher on the ground, has controlled 90% of all time in the grappling. Charles, just a 49% control rate. Again, the more aggressive finisher, but I do think Charles is going to get taken down here and spend some time on his back hunting for submissions. And Gamrot actually does stuff from top. He lands elbows, he lands ground and pound. He actually does try to damage his opponents when he has them in his control. So I like Gamrot on the money line. You like Gamrot to win the fight inside the distance at about plus 240. I would imagine you like him on the money line as well, but expecting him to finish Charles here. This is a fight. If Gamrot is going to get a standing knockout, this is the type of opponent he could potentially get it against because Charles has a very bad chin. Something else I wanted to note too, and curious in your thoughts on this, Billy. Charles was in Las Vegas like 10 days ago, 2 weeks ago, with a contender
So,
series guy
yeah.
who is basically like, a son to him. He's like a father figure to the kid. But, being out of the gym, flying to Vegas, then flying back to Brazil, like you're not in the gym, for the entirety of that time. The weight cutting could potentially be an issue as a result of that. So did that factor into your handicap at all? The fact that like this is kind of a weird spot for Charles. I don't even know if he wanted to fight here. It just happens to be a card in Rio and they needed a headliner for it. Normally this would have been Jose Aldo. So in terms of like the spot with Charles, did you also kind of get like the little bit of weirdness and the strange vibes that I got from it too?
Yeah, I noticed that as well. I mean, I don't know, like, was his whole camp training together at the PI for a couple weeks
Right.
ahead of that, and then they moved it down? Like, I try not to overweight that stuff, but it's certainly a factor, especially when I'm already kind of on the Gamrot side. I'll get to the inside the distance in a second. I really like that you brought up the control time because it kind of illustrates the point that I've been thinking. These guys are a year apart in age, not even. Charles Oliveira is barely, not even a year older than Gamrot. But they kind of represent two different generations of
Mhm.
submission grappling, where Charles Oliveira is the old school, very jujitsu-y. I'm going to play off my back. I'm going to get a De La Riva guard. I'm going to hit you with dummy sweeps and entangle your legs and work to sweep and all that stuff. Where Gamrot is that new school that we see dominating now of, submission wrestlers. They're not Brazilian jiu-jitsu guys so much. They're very good wrestlers who add submissions. They're always looking to be on top. They're always looking to scramble. You're not going to hold Gamrot down in any length of time. If Oliveira gets a sweep, Gamrot will pop right back up and force him to scramble. And I think that Gamrot's style, especially this day and age, just works better for MMA. We see guys like him, Sarakian, Benny Dariush. The, Russian Sambo guys, I think, are more similar to that, but they're kind of doing their own thing too with more top pressure and control, less scrambles and athleticism. Either way, I think that's a big advantage for Gamrot. As far as the inside the distance, he Charles Oliveira got knocked out like 3 months ago. It wasn't even that long ago. And it kind of felt like for a long time he was walking a razor's edge of, I'm gonna let you hit me. You might clip me a little bit, but I'll fall to my back, and then you're gonna come into my guard and get submitted. I think that might have just finally came home to roost, where the chin just isn't allowing him to take those shots and recover. And he has been knocked out 5 times in his career, so it wasn't like he was always able to survive those in the first place. 35 years old, so, or about to turn 36, not crazy old. 46 professional fights, most of those in the UFC. He's been in the UFC since he was 20. That's a lot of damage. That's a lot of wear and tear. He's transitioning to coaching. Um, I just think Gamrot, especially with his ground and pound and how active he is on the top, over the course of 5 rounds, can probably do enough damage to get Oliveira out of there. Wouldn't shock me if he became one of the few people to ever submit Oliveira too. I don't think he'd submit him in a pure submission grappling contest, but when you're also punching him in the face and tiring him out, that gets easier. So yeah, I like the inside the distance at plus 250. I That was the only thing I put in our sheet, but it was more of in addition to the Gamrot money line that you suggested. Where did you see the nickname thing? Because Tapology still says Do Bronx. Did he just declare it to the universe like Michael Scott, or what's going on with that?
Yeah, I saw that on Twitter this week. So there's a story on MMA Mania. Charles Oliveira changed his nickname from Do Bronx to Predator for UFC Rio. I don't know why he did this. I don't know if it's a promotion. Like, is there a new Predator movie coming out that he got like paid to change his name to? That's the only thing I could possibly think is like they're gonna advertise because they always advertise a movie during the main event, an upcoming movie. So I'm wondering if there's like a Predator movie announcement coming, and that's why he changed the nickname. I actually would almost lay juice on the fact that it's connected to some sort of movie announcement, and he got paid as a promotional partner for it because it's a little weird.
Yeah, I mean, you can't get sponsorships on your clothes anymore. So if the last thing you can get sponsored is your nickname, I guess go get that money. But Do Bronx is like one of the iconic UFC nicknames of all time. I don't think you should go away from that unless there's a big check attached.
I'm thinking of that commercial that's on TV right now where the kids are walking across the stage for graduation and they say like Jablonski Auto Body LLC, like here's your diploma. And
Yeah,
that's
right.
literally what we're doing with UFC fighters now because as you said, they can't put sponsorships on their body or on their clothes. So they're just going to sell their naming rights apparently to the highest bidder. Hey,
Like a damn stadium. Yeah, do what you can
I'm not
do.
going to argue against it by any means. I actually think it's kind of brilliant. So Charles may be paving the way for a new era of sponsor named UFC fighters. Let's move on to our fight of the night. Davison Figueiredo against Malton Jackson in the bantamweight division. Jackson is humongous. Figgy, a former flyweight, but Jackson 5 inches taller, a 7 inch reach advantage. Just a tremendous athlete. Huge hands, really strong wrist control. Like it seems impossible to grapple this dude up against the fence. When he hits people, he really hurts them because he has huge power given his hand size and his size in general. But he's also not particularly high volume, and he is grappleable. I could see Figgy potentially getting him down, hunting for a submission here. Figgy attempts 2.7 submission attempts per 5 minutes of control. And again, just to go back to the control numbers, as I mentioned in the Gamrot fight, Figgy's controlled 65% of his career grappling minutes, just a 49% control rate. For Jackson, also just defends takedowns at 68% as well. So I think Figgy needs to win or needs to grapple in order to win this fight. I could see him submitting Jackson. That said, I make Jackson about minus 425. I like him as a parlay piece. I also like the Ghost to Decision prop at around minus 160. I make that closer to minus 190. That said, Figgy's coming off a knee injury, so not super
Yeah.
confident in what he's going to look like physically here. Maybe he eats one punch and that knee blows out. Again, something we've seen in the past with dudes with repaired legs and knees. They get cracked and they go to absorb the punch like they normally would and turn the head and turn the body, and the knee just gives out as a result of the force. So definitely worried about him potentially re-injuring the knee. I think it's, what has it been, like 18 months since he faced Corey Sandhagen and injured it. So not like an incredibly long layoff to let that thing recover. But yeah, I do like Jackson to win this fight. You like Jackson to win inside the distance at about 2-1. Where do you like that down to? And what was your analysis here?
I mean, the knee injury is a big part of it. It was not 18 months ago. It was about 5 months ago. That
Is
was
it
this
really?
May.
Wow.
where that fight happened. I know if you glanced at the Tapology and you remembered that fight, you would assume it would be 2024. But no, May of 2025 just messed his knee up. He is a almost 38-year-old who cut a ton of weight to make flyweight for a really long time. I think this might be the beginning of like the Brian Ortega phase of his
Mm.
career, where just the body starts falling apart and it's not great. And that's okay. You can still win some matchups like that. Montel Jackson is not a great one. He is massive. He has scored knockdowns in 8 of his last 9 fights. More knockdowns than fights across his UFC career. Big, scary dude. And if you don't have your knees, that's not not the kind of guy you want to fight. Someone who's willing to grapple with you or, play point fighting on the feet, a la Aljamain Sterling against Ortega, right? That one made sense. Sterling's not really looking to kill you the way Montel Jackson is. I think this is a terrible fight for Figueiredo. I think any fight now is a terrible fight for him, given the knee injury. Even if it only kept him out for 3 weeks, a month, whatever, then you weren't really training 4 months ago, right? You were out for a month not that long ago. How much of that did you get back? Just not a great thing. Yeah, I'm seeing around plus 2-1 for Montel Jackson inside the distance. I think I'd go to like plus 150. The only I think hang up there is at what point does it get too close to the -3.5 point spread that you just take the point spread instead of inside the distance. I like it either way, but that's kind of a risk tolerance thing. Obviously, the -3.5 gives you a little bit more outs. And if those prices were to get close together, you just take the likelier option.
Football season's here, folks, and we've got some huge improvements and updates coming on the award-winning Action Network app. We're very excited to discuss in the weeks ahead. But to get the most out of the app, you'll still need to be an Action Pro subscriber. It's only with Action Pro you get real-time pick alerts from me and the entire Action Network team of experts. Plus, you can access pro projections powered by Sean Kerner and our predictive analytics team, plus a ton of other benefits. And right now, Action Network podcast listeners can save $20 off the annual price of Action Pro. Just go to actionnetwork.com/pro and use promo code POD20. That's actionnetwork.com/pro and use promo code POD20 for $20 off the annual price of Action Pro. Let's move on to our favorite underdogs for this week, and then we'll transition to props and our best bets. In terms of underdogs, there's one that we're in alignment on, and then a couple of others that we identified individually as potentially being value spots this weekend. The alignment comes on Stuart Nickel against Lucas Roca. Nickel, 4 years younger. He's the bigger man, 2 inches taller, 1 inch reach advantage, and he's both the better wrestler and the more proactive grappler in this fight. He did get caught in a guillotine by Jesus Aguilar. It's Aguilar's one move. Happened to hit it. I make Nickel a slight favorite here, about -116, but I also make the ghosted decision around a pick'em price. You're getting as high as plus 158. The flyweight divisional average line should be about plus 117 or 46% implied. So getting a little extra plus money on the GTD here and getting Nickel at plus money when I think he should be a slight favorite. Billy, what's your breakdown of this flyweight matchup between Roca and Nickel?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Nickel. I tried to bet him, or I did bet him against Jesus Aguilar. Obviously, didn't work out. Before that fight, I watched a bunch of his regional tape, and my scouting breakdown there was if he can grapple, he's going to be a problem for people. He's kind of awkward on the feet, not a great striker. But if he meaning Nickel can get a takedown, he's going to do just fine. Lucas Rocha has been taken down 7 times in 7.5 minutes of cage time between the Contender Series in the UFC, and then submitted by Clayton Carpenter in the last one. Just very little grappling off his back in that fight. As soon as he got taken down, he spent the rest of the first round there. Got taken down in the second round, submitted fairly quickly there. I think Stewie Nickel's going to be able to follow that same path. Big fan of him. A lot of the Australian guys are coming up. Also, I believe his nickname Kakamora, and if we have any listeners in the Solomon Islands, they can fact check me here, although I doubt that. I believe those are like the little coconut things from Moana, like the little sentient coconut things. I don't know if you've watched that, Zerillo, not having a small child at home as I do, but that's kind of awesome, right? Like you named yourself off the little coconut demon things from a Disney, not from a Disney movie, from Legend, but that's featured in a Disney movie. So gotta love that. Seems like a fun dude. Was undefeated until he got guillotined by Jesus Aguilar. And as you pointed out, that'll happen sometimes, right? Like you just gotta accept that.
If you are listening from the Solomon Islands, please reach out. We'll make sure to send you something. We'd appreciate the
Yeah,
support from any
100%.
region of the world. But if you're from the Solomon Islands, definitely reach out and we will definitely send something your way. Another underdog I like in this card, Lucas Almeida Brazilian going against Michael Aswell. Almeida's 3 inches taller, has a 2 inch reach advantage. He's very aggressive coming forward. Aswell is the more technical kickboxer of the two, but neither of these guys defend strikes well. I think we get a high paced war here, very likely going to be close and competitive on the scorecards. And it is favored to go to a decision, even though I'm expecting a high paced, aggressive, violent striking matchup. This fight is around minus 135 to go to a decision. I make that closer to minus 175. And I also make Almeida around plus 110. You can get as high as plus 135 on the hometown fighter. So Almeida versus Aswell in the featherweight division, Billy. GTD or Almeida money line, either of those bets that you like.
I'm tempted to bet as well, and if this fight weren't in Brazil, I probably would.
Mm-hmm.
He's a guy who makes rounds look close all the time. He throws a ton of volume. His power hasn't really played up at the UFC level. Got to the Contender Series, lost a split. Went back and fought, a higher level regional guy, won a split decision. UFC debut proper, loses a unanimous decision. It was 29-28. Kind of all the rounds were close. And that's, I think, the type of scenario where that home crowd advantage does matter. Because if the crowd is freaking out every time Almeida lands something and just, no selling it when Aswell does, that does have an impact on the judges. So I like the volume from Aswell, but I just can't do it in Brazil when everyone's going to be screaming Uva Marais at him and he's trying to eke out close rounds in hostile territory is just not a great strategy.
I was literally about to say this is a Uva Marais fight. If you don't know the translation, you are going to die in Portuguese, is what the Brazilian crowds tend to chant at the
To
opposing
the tune
fighters.
of Whoop There It Is, though, which is the
Yes.
actual fun part. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just one of the best crowds in MMA. I love anytime the UFC's
Yeah.
down in Brazil. And we do have a lot of Brazil versus non-Brazilian fighters on the card. The first fight on the card, I believe, is Brazil versus Brazil, and every other fight is a Brazilian fighter against a non-Brazilian fighter. So pretty good matchmaking here in terms of the nationalities and making sure the home crowd has somebody to root for in every single matchup, including Julia Plastri against Karolina Kowalkiewicz, but you'll be rooting for the underdog here. Kowalkiewicz, 12 years older, 39, Plastri just 27. I'd actually lean to Plastri inside the distance given the age gap, but I only make that around plus 350, and I think the best available numbers were roughly plus 270. You like Carolina to win a round without getting finished and potentially to win the fight too. You like her point spread and also her money line at about plus 400. The point spread is even money. Tell me what you saw on tape between Carolina and Polastri.
Yeah, I've gone back and forth on whether I think Karolina Kowalkiewicz is washed like at four different points in her career. I think at this point, she lost five in a row and somehow stayed in the UFC,
Mhm.
but then ripped off four wins. And then they gave her tougher competition again. Yasmin Lucindo and Denise Gomes did not win either of those fights, but they weren't like dominations. They were reasonably close fights. I don't think she would have covered the point spread in either, but she won at least one round on one judge's scorecard in both of those. And Pilastri is a big step down. She's 1-2 in the UFC with her only win coming via split decision. She's been taken down a bunch. She has not quite a negative striking differential, but pretty much even. Carolina Kavlich throws a lot of damage out there. This is, or a lot of strikes out there, not very much damage. This is another fight where I would be like rushing to put in a bet if it were in, certainly if it were in Poland, if the UFC ever went there. But even at the Apex, I'd be very excited to make this bet on Kowalkiewicz. In Brazil, it's kind of like maybe I can see it. But does she do enough to convince one judge in each round? All these rounds are going to be close and kind of low impact, I think, unless she's totally washed. So even money on the point spread plus 3.5, and then plus 400 on her money line. Well, last year's not great, right? This is a big step down in competition. I could see it. Again, don't love it due to the location, but we can't have everything go in the same direction for a lot of these picks.
Go on to our top prop section and briefly discuss the first fight on the card, which I mentioned before, Luan Lacerda against Simon Oliveira. Oliveira came in at 144 pounds for a bantamweight fight this morning. He was the only fighter out of the 24 on the card to miss weight. Apparently, I don't know how, but apparently the UFC says that this fight is going to continue to go on. What are they going to fine Oliveira? Like 80% of his purse in order to make this fight happen? I mean, for an 8 pound weight miss, you have to take a pretty significant sum from one fighter's pay. Now, initially, I did project value on the goes to decision and Lacerda to win by decision here, considering an 8 pound weight miss is so dramatic that I have to imagine there's some sort of health issue on the Oliveira side. It's, there's no reason you miss by that much unless something's
Yeah.
going on. So I tend to think, and Oliveira is a guy who actually tends to fade in the second half of his fights anyway. If he had a bad weight cut, if he has a health problem going on, I really don't want my money on this fight necessarily. So I did project value on the GTD and Lacerda by decision here. I'm probably going to end up passing on this fight altogether after the weight miss. I actually show parlay value on Lacerda. I think I made his money line about minus 275 and saw minus 250 yesterday. So Lacerda in a parlay with Jackson. Maybe I'll find a third partner for that. It'll probably go up though, considering the weight miss as well. So, did you have any bets here, Billy, or any thoughts after the weight miss?
Yeah, I didn't anyway, so definitely. I just assumed an 8 pound miss meant we wouldn't be fighting, so I kind of didn't pay much attention to that. Will be very interesting if we ever get the details on what actually had to transpire to make that fight happen, because as you pointed out, with no commission in Brazil, you can take any amount you want. We'll see what that ended up being, hopefully.
Bia Mesquita making her UFC debut in the women's bantamweight division against Irina Alexeyeva. Mesquita, one of the best grapplers in the world, period. 24 titles at black belt in the four major gi championships. I believe 13 IBJJF titles, 5 at O and MMA, 4 of those wins coming in LFA, 3 by submission, a knockout, and also a DQ win for an illegal upkick. Alexeyeva is a judoka, so she's going to engage in the grappling here, which she's going to play right into Mesquita's hands. I think you can probably, if you're a fighter who has competent counter grappling and can box, you could probably beat Mesquita. This is not the type of matchup that is going to threaten her. You actually, though, like Mesquita to finish this fight via KO at plus 550. As I said, she won her last fight, I believe, via ground and pound. So what led you to her KO prop as opposed to the submission prop for a decorated submission grappler?
So technically, she has won both of her last two fights by KO, TKO, DQ, which is how those are phrased. Obviously, you're not projecting a disqualification win, but thought that was interesting that both of her last two, as she's came up against harder competition, she has looked to strike more, right? She hasn't not strike more on the feet, strike more when she gets to top position. I think that's what's going to happen here. Alexeva's only win in the UFC was a knee bar, and as we've seen time and time again, rolling for leg locks against people who can defend them is just a one-way ticket to getting your face smashed in.
Yep.
I'm surprised, as you pointed out, she has a judo background. They don't do lower body submissions in judo. So that kind of surprised me that that's what she got. But Mosquito wrestled at a fairly high level as well as a youth, judo at a fairly high level, been grappling since she's 5, probably the best female grappler of all time. But could she use that grappling to get to a top position, rain down punches? That would not shock me at all. You have a bet on her that I believe is entirely more likely, but it's plus 500 on the knockout. And I think sometimes, we assume you're going to press the grappling advantage. That means a submission. Kind of hard to submit someone like Alexeva who is competent on the ground. Not that Mosquito couldn't. I think the easiest path for her might be just to do damage from the top. So we'll see. It's a little bit of it's a little bit of a sprinkle for me, but could be fun. I'm very excited for Mosquito's UFC run though. Thin division, she could be 2 fights away from a title shot. Her against someone like Kayla Harrison is a massive physical difference, but if it gets to the ground, which Kayla Harrison usually does, that could be fun. So this is an exciting one. Active IBJJF Hall of Fame member, Bia Mesquita, has also won some Nogi World Championships, ADCC. Very excited for her.
Yeah, I think plus 550 on KO is definitely an interesting approach to take. And as you mentioned, like rolling for the knee bar, you're just going to end up getting your face planted into the mat and eating punches from the side until the ref steps in and stops it.
Right.
So definitely distinct possibility. I really like the analysis there. Instead of laying minus 110 on a submission, I'm probably going to try to structure her round one sub prop, which is as high as plus
Yeah.
270, and her round two sub prop, which is plus 500, and try to come out with a profit between those two bets. You can definitely get, if you exclude her round three submission probability from the bet, you can actually find a way to get much better than minus 110 if you're
Mhm.
structuring out a plus 270 and a plus 500 together. You could go,
Could even DraftKings same game parlay there with the under a certain amount of time. I don't know what those prices are, but they do a great job of allowing those to be built to your liking.
yeah, I thought about like an under 1.5 end submission with Mesquita. That might be able to give you a nice little boost. Looking at
You can
her,
do the minutes too. You can do under 10.5 minutes on the DraftKings SGP. So we
so
got that
you
going
can,
for
I
us.
cannot. New York does not have that option,
Oh,
unfortunately. This
yeah,
is
yeah,
this is something we've discussed. The For some reason, state to state, there's a little bit more limited betting options, betting availability. For some reason, I don't
yeah.
have the ability to parlay minutes. I can only parlay 1.5 rounds, 2.5 rounds, etc. But agreed, completely agreed. If you have the ability to do that, Mosquita and under 9.5 minutes or under 8.5 minutes with a submission, I think could definitely be a way to go about it. You don't even have to bet the submission. You could just bet her with the under 8.5, under 9.5 minutes, and maybe get
Yeah.
somewhat of an actionable price on that, excluding her second half of the fight finish probabilities. I think could be a good way to go about it. But this is a girl that they're a woman they're going to match up very soft and try to progress in the division as quickly as they possibly can because she's so decorated and it's fun to talk about her accomplishments and it's going to be fun to match her up against different opponents because of those accomplishments. Let's talk about a flyweight bout between Jafel Filo and Clayton Carpenter. Filo's 1 inch taller, has the 1 inch reach advantage. He's really good on top. He's very aggressive and dangerous early, but I do think he tends to fade the longer his fights go. I do project pre-fight value on Carpenter's money line, but I actually think you may find a better live price after the opening round. He's got better pace, got better cardio down the stretch, and I think he'll win the wrestling in the second and third rounds. So pre-fight, Carpenter to minus 125 is fine. I think you'll get a better number after round one. The goes to decision prop, I make about minus 165. You can lay minus 140 currently. I probably like that up to around minus 150 between Carpenter and Filo, even though I think Filo could potentially get finished late here in this fight. Do you have any bets for Carpenter against Filo, Billy?
I do. I'm actually betting on this one to end via submission, either guy
Mm.
at plus 225. Think this should be mostly a grappling match. All of Filo's matches have ended up on the ground one way or the other. Both of his UFC wins are submissions. He lost via neck crank to Muhammad Mokaev, but had an extremely deep knee bar. I don't know how Mokaev came back from
Hmm.
that. And Carpenter, same way. I mean, he's got two rear naked chokes. Those are his two UFC wins. Got three takedowns and was hunting submissions on the Contender Series. They put him against a Russian grappler in Tagir Ulanbekov, and he got shut down. It's one of those things where if both guys are attacking submissions, both guys are also leaving openings for submissions. So that's kind of one of the differences in how these guys grapple and a lot of fighters do versus that Russian combat sambo style where they're not really looking for submissions. They're just looking to beat you up from the top. And if you give them one, great. I think these guys will both be going for it. If it does end early, I think it will be a submission. I like your angle on it goes to a decision. We have a pretty narrow window, I believe, for the submission to happen. If it doesn't happen in the first 6 or 7 minutes, probably not going to, but both these guys are going to be exchanging on the mat until that point.
Yeah, Filo like destroyed Makaev's knee. Makaev
Yeah, that was crazy.
ultimately didn't tap, but he hurt him. Filo claimed that he tapped 3 points like it during that fight. He ended up appealing it at some point. There is video where you can see Makaev potentially like doing the little tap on the back, the Brazilian
Mhm.
tap, as some people call it, the fake tap to get the guy to release the submission attempt so you can escape. So there's still debate as to whether
Yeah.
Filo tapped Makaev or not. He definitely hurt him at the very minimum, may have changed the trajectory of his career with that potential knee bar he had on him. So, yeah, Filo is violent. I think he's dangerous against anybody early. If somebody wins in round one, I think it's likely to be him. And then Carpenter, as the fight progresses, I think is likely to take over. Ricardo Ramos against Khan Ofley in the featherweight division. Gotta say Ramos if we're on the Rio card.
Ricardo
Ramos,
Ramos.
yeah, I mean, you got to get the names right here, especially if they're going to be selling them out in the future. I need to get them right while they're currently named
Well,
what
they're
they
free.
are. So I show value on both Ramos to win by decision and the goes to decision prop here. I know I keep giving out decision props. Listen, it's the worst bet in MMA. It's the worst bet in sports. Nobody wants to bet on any fight to go to decision. Nobody wants to sweat that. I don't want to sweat it. It's just oftentimes where I see value on these fights, especially relative to historics, relative to career averages. So I do make this fight about minus 160 to go to a decision. You can lay minus 110 on that prop. Also make Ramos by decision plus 133. You can get as high as plus 180. He's 2 inches taller. He has a 6 inch reach advantage. He is not a reliable minute winner, and he's a quitter. So, I don't love the angles on Ramos by decision, but he's the bigger man. I think it's going to be a close and competitive fight. Hopefully, he has better heart and he's more willing to stay in the fight. The moment it starts going bad for Ramos, he does tend to look for a way out. So I probably wouldn't bet both Ramos decision and goes the decision. I might just take the plus money on Ramos decision because I think if it goes 15 minutes, he'll probably get the nod from judges in Brazil. But minus 110 on a GTD prop, not necessarily bad either way. So, what are your thoughts on this fight between Ramos and Ofli and any bets you might have?
Yeah, not a ton. I didn't look into this too hard. Genghis Khan Ofli is a great nickname. He should not
Mm-hmm.
sell that one for cheap. Um, and also he reminds me of, I believe it was Dennis Bazooka who you first described this way, of his best skill is try hard. Like, and I think there's a little bit of that with Khan Ofli, where he's not really, I think, from a skill standpoint at this level, the guys he's beat a little bit lesser, and kind of cheeky like guillotines and stuff like that. But sometimes if you try hard and the other guy doesn't, that can get you there, or it can carry you to the final bell, which for your purposes is especially relevant here. So I like it. I'm just not a big Genghis Khan fan, other than his wonderful nickname.
It's a great nickname. You could also call him Dennis Boomerang instead of Dennis Bazooka because he's Australian. Dennis Bazooka, I guess, is what we're going to go with
No,
in terms
Bazooka
of
is
fighting
a
styles.
Long Island guy, isn't
What's
he?
that?
I think Bazooka is a New York or Long Island guy,
Oh
but
no, I meant Con Ofli. Yeah, Bazooka
oh,
Bazooka
I
is
see.
very
Yeah,
much yeah, Bazooka is very much from Long Island. Con
yeah, yeah.
Ofli though
I see.
from Melbourne, Australia. So that's why I went the boomerang instead of the bazooka. Not a great joke,
Now
guys.
I get you.
You can go ahead and throw that one away. Let's go to our final prop from the prop section here. We actually have agreement on this one. That's Joel Alvarez to knock out Vicente Luque at about plus 155. Alvarez moving up to 155 here moving up from 155 to 170 here, and he's still going to be the bigger man. 4 inches
Mhm.
taller, 2 inch reach advantage. Had a ton of problems cutting weight at 155. We'll see if he stays up at 170 or whether he goes back down. But we all thought that Vicente Luque was shot after the Jeff Neal fight. He had that brain bleed that popped up as well that we all became aware of. Had that very weird finish loss to Joaquin Buckley where he just sort of turtled and accepted the damage and let the fight end. I then bet him at big numbers against Themba Gorimbo, saying maybe he's not so washed because Themba Gorimbo, in order to be in the fight, you actually have to have skill. He nuked Themba Gorimbo in about 3 seconds, and then a bad loss again to Kevin Holland. So this is the Vicente Luque is shot or not fight, probably to determine whether he can take some damage. I think ultimately this one looks a lot like Alvarez's knockout of Thiago Moises. I think he just walks him down, beats him up, pushes him up against the cage, and finishes the fight with knees and elbows. I don't think Luque can take the damage anymore. I think he can grapple. And I don't think Alvarez, even though he is a decorated submission grappler, I don't want to say decorated, but a lethal submission grappler, mostly off of his back. I don't think this one hits the mat. I think he finishes Luque on the feet. You seem to be in agreement here, Billy. Alvarez by KO at around plus 155. Do you have a price target for that number? And did I miss anything in terms of my analysis?
Yeah, I think I would, if I was setting this line, I'd probably make it like even money. So anything beyond that. Luke's one path to winning fights at this point in his career is submissions. His best submissions
Of
are
course.
from a front headlock series.
Yeah.
3 of his last 4 wins are either anacondas or darce. Joel Alvarez, despite liking grappling and getting a bunch of submissions, I don't think has ever even attempted a takedown in the UFC. I know that was a stat until very recently. He might have attempted like one. He's not going to put his head into that position for the chokes that Luke is good at. I don't think Luque has the athleticism to take him down. Um, and therefore we have a striking matchup. And Joel Alvarez can knock you out even if you're not washed or didn't have a brain bleed. So when we throw those factors into it, I'm surprised it's even plus money of any kind. Interesting that you said it'd be you might see him go back to lightweight. I would actually bet a lot of money we see him at middleweight sooner than we ever see him at lightweight again. He is a big boy. Anyone out there, watching this, if you have these fights on and like a casual observer, a friend is around that doesn't usually watch fights, ask him to come in and say which one of these guys used to be at a smaller weight class. No one will get it right. The people who don't know who Joel Alvarez is will be 100% wrong on that. Would not shock me if he did like the Anthony Rumble Johnson and ended up as a middleweight or above. Who knows? Big boy.
May see career best from Alvarez too on Saturday, potentially. Oftentimes we see these
Yeah.
guys who are too big for the weight classes that they fight in. The moment they add on the pounds, the moment they feel a little bit more comfortable not cutting the weight, not cutting an extra 15 pounds, they just look immediately better in the cage. Gilbert Burns, obviously moving up from 155 to 170, that helped his career immensely. It happens all the time. These guys end up, not being weight bullies and they think they may struggle up a division. And it turns out they just feel better and feel significantly better. And they have a speed advantage because they're going against,
Yeah,
guys from a higher
exactly.
division. So, yeah, Alvarez not only bigger, will probably be the faster man here too, which I think poses significant problems for Vicente Luque. Our best bet, actually, before we get to our best bets, if you're on Twitter, we have a great new feature. If you see a bet from any of your favorite action experts or anyone on gambling Twitter, you can now tag at Playbook and tell our bot to build you a bet slip at a book of your choice. It will build out for you with a clip slip link that opens right up to your sports book. So keep an eye out for a new tool at Playbook on Twitter. It'll line shop for you as well and give you the best available odds. Let's move on to our best bets and an agreement on a best bet between Jonathan Diniz and Mario Pinto. Billy messaged me earlier in this week. He said Pinto Diniz going to be an all-time sharp versus square fight. Diniz open plus 115 is now minus 112. 75% of Tapology picks on Pinto. Tapology is one of the sources that I use to pull in for my public pick data. There's like over 1,000 votes on each fight every week. I think it does give you a pretty good indication of public perception. There's another publicly available resource, which I won't mention here, pretty easy to find though, that also has, pretty good vote percentages for every fight every week. And then I also pull in betting data as well across the three different data sources. Pinto getting picked at about a 50%, 57% clip this week compared to opening odds, making him a favorite. Well, the line ended up flipping against him, as Billy stated. And anytime that happens, it's pretty obvious to me which side I'm going to end up being on based on when I factor all of these inputs into my model. Now, in terms of the technical aspects, and I want to let Billy get more into this, but from what I saw, Pinto lost round one to Austin Lane, got knocked down in that round. Deniz has yet to have a UFC fight where his opponent wasn't trying to grapple him. And I don't see Pinto
Yeah,
grappling here. So if you're just going to let Deniz strike, he's the better kickboxer. He's the more technical man. He's a former professional kickboxer. Unless Pinto is able to grapple him here, I think he picks him apart and ends
yeah,
up winning via KO or very wide decision. I make Deniz minus 170 in this matchup. My model does. I like him up to about minus 150 on the money line. Can currently get about minus 122 to minus 125. So, Billy, what did you see this week in terms of like Pinto's potential to grapple in this fight whatsoever? Do you not see him grappling and just trying to strike it out? And then what method of victory do you like for Diniz here?
yeah. I don't see him grappling either. It's a concern because we haven't seen him compelled to grapple, right? Either in the Contender Series or in the UFC. Looking back a little bit farther, he didn't fight really tough guys prior to getting to the UFC, so we can't draw too many conclusions there. But yeah, my technical read was, these two guys are going to exchange on the feet. One of them is, a international kickboxing champion. The other's just a big, strong dude who can hit hard, but also got dropped by Austin Lane. If striking is going to be your thing, you can't get dropped by Austin Lane. That's just not how that works. Then he's obviously a much better, more technical striker than that. I thought the sentiment had kind of gone against Deniz because he struggled a little bit against Guzzi in his last fight. We
Mhm.
have since learned Guzzi was taking every available steroid. He was suspended for all of them.
A
And also
shocker.
Guzzi
Didn't
just
look like
kept
it at all. The least
yeah.
steroid looking body ever assembled.
And also spent the whole fight just holding him against the fence, which not a lot Deniz could do about that. Still landed 112 strikes. Should have finished him. Like I was very impressed by the heart shown by our hero Guzzi, who we can't wait to get back clean or not, I don't really care with a guy like that. And is just a dangerous striker. He lost to Marcin Tybura before that. Again, Tybura grappled him. It's hard. I was actually a little bit impressed by his grappling. He does a good job of staying safe and kind of slowly working his way back rather than freaking out and giving too many openings. So I think Pinto could take him down and the fight extend, and then eventually they have to go back to the feet and Denise can strike. In terms of method of victory, I think it's got to be a knockout at this point because Pinto got dropped by Austin Lane, as I've pointed out. Can't do that. This is one I had in my luck ratings too. I got this one at even money, like when I started typing my luck ratings. By the time I published the article, an hour later, it was minus 112. And now Denise is what, minus 130, I think we're seeing. I'm with you. I think minus 170 would probably be about the price. If you want to go knockout or minus 3.5 or something to get better price, I think you should still just play the money line here, though.
You can get as low as minus 125 still, but it's definitely been on the move. I'm seeing, as you said, closer to minus 135 market wide. So definitely jump on that earlier as opposed to later. In defense of our guy, Goozy Hines, I don't believe you get suspended from your union engineering job as a result of taking steroids. So when you're a full time engineer and a full time union guy, you do whatever the hell you want. Doesn't really matter if you're going to fight in the UFC on the side. This is a side job. So, take all the steroids you want for your side job as long as it's not getting you suspended from your actual full time gig. One other heavyweight fight we didn't get to. It's the only fight on the card we have not touched on. That's Vitor Petrino against Thomas Pedersen. I lean Pedersen at about plus 260, but you'll almost certainly get a better live number after the opening round. Petrino just has such an athleticism advantage here. KO1 is highly likely. He's an inch taller, has a 3-inch reach advantage, and he's just a far more explosive athlete. But we've seen Petrino collapse a number of times as a big favorite. Pedersen has pretty good cardio. He's willing to grapple. I think if he gets out of the first round, he's going to make things competitive and likely force Petrino a little bit uncomfortable in deeper waters. So Pedersen live after round one would be my lean on the other heavyweight bout. Likely not betting this though, unless you get a big live number after the opening round. Do you have any bets for Petrino against Pedersen, Billy?
I do not. Probably a good DFS fight just because heavyweights, either Pedersen's getting takedowns or Petrino's doing stuff. But this is like a probably go take a break and go eat dinner with my family kind of fight. I don't, it's hard to care. I know Petrino had the hype around him. Now he's just, as a light heavyweight, he looked like he might be this big athletic dude. Now he's just kind of another heavyweight. So this is one of the fights that is on the card. Is about all I have to say about it.
Aside from Alvarez, any other strong DFS guys for you this week?
I think Mosquita is an interesting one. You've pointed out for years and years people tend to underplay
They do.
female fighters.
Mm-hmm.
It's a narrow path because you don't get the knockdown points if you take someone down and submit them or finish them on the ground, either way. I think the hope is that she either gets it really quick or Alexieva scrambles back to her feet and we get 3, 4, 5 takedowns, Marab style. That's the fun one for me for tournaments. As you pointed out, Alvarez also an incredible play. So those are the two, depending on tournament and cash games, how tight you want to be. I I think more people are catching on to some of these women being better plays, but we're still showing lower projected ownership on her than a male bantamweight with identical odds would typically see. So
The only other one I want to ask you about is just Kovacevic because you do like her as a dog. I assume she's very cheaply priced, but finishing upside pretty low, volume upside relatively low. Like how do you view a fighter like that where yes, they may win as a dog, but like the volume, the overall ceiling of the score is not all that high.
yeah, I used to call this in the DFS breakdown I do for Fantasy Labs the Sean Zerillo special because you always pointed out these female fighters with the long odds for the fight to go to a decision have a strong floor. So Kovalevich is an awesome spot for a cash game because you can force in, if you want to play both Alvarez and Mosquito, you probably have to play Kovalevich to make the salaries work. And you're not really hoping for her to win in cash games. You're saying, let's get 15 minutes. She averages five and change significant strikes per minute. I don't think Pilastri is going to take her down a ton. So you're just hoping for a floor play there. Probably stay away in GPPs though, because as you pointed out, she could win and still not have a good score, even relative to her salary for tournaments. So that's not one I would do there. But yeah, that was that I used to call that like the Sean Zerillo special section of the DFS breakdown. It was like, here's the cheap women's or very light fighter who's not going to win, but they're going to be there for 15 minutes.
I appreciate those breakdowns. Just wanted to add that in the end. I've been playing DFS for UFC every single week, basically, that I do this. I always have multiple lineups. I use our Fantasy Labs tools to build out like 20, 30 lineups with all unique fighters in each one at least, but also been playing more NFL DFS and MLB DFS using our tools as well. So just wanted to get your brief DFS thoughts here, and maybe we'll continue to do that week by week. But that'll do it for our UFC betting preview. You can find more UFC betting content for both Billy and myself on actionnetwork.com. And remember, if you'd like to instantly tell some of the bets that we discussed on today's show, look for the quick slip links both in the podcast and video description, or visit actionnetwork.com/bet now. Don't forget to download the free award-winning Action Network app and sign up for Action Pro for immediate access to expert picks and analysis. Best of luck with all your bets this weekend. Enjoy the violence. Thank you for listening. See you next time.